I'm Nolan Pierce. I'm 65 years old, and if 4 decades in structural engineering taught me one thing, it's that the most catastrophic collapses don't happen because of the storm outside. They happen because of the rot inside. I gave my son and his wife a debt-free life, a $2 million estate, and my unconditional trust. In return, they handed me a cardboard box and a 10-day eviction notice. They looked at me and saw a grieving, faltering old man who had lost his wife and now his only child. They saw a relic, a soft target. They didn't know that I actually own the holding company that holds the liens on their secret debts. They didn't know I was the architect of the very legal ground they were trying to stand on. They thought they were kicking a helpless pensioner to the curb. They didn't know that by tomorrow morning, they would be homeless, and I would be the state's primary witness in their federal indictment. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The air in the funeral parlor was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of industrial-strength floor wax, cheap coffee, and thousands of dollars worth of lilies that were already starting to brown at the edges. Lilies. I hated them. My late wife, Audrey, had hated them too. She always said they smelled like a funeral, which I suppose was the point, but she had made me promise never to have them at her service. I had kept that promise. But for Jared, my son, I had no say. I stood by the open casket, my hands clasped behind my back, watching the room. I wasn't crying. I had done my crying in the private dark of my study 3 days ago when the coroner called. Now, I was working. I was observing. It's what I do. I look for stress fractures. I look for load-bearing inconsistencies. And standing 10 feet away, receiving the condolences of a line of strangers, was the biggest structural flaw in the room. Serena, my daughter-in-law. She was putting on a masterclass. She was draped in designer black silk that probably cost more than my first car. She was clinging to the arm of Jared's old college roommate, her body heaving with what looked like earth-shattering grief. She was the picture of the devastated young widow, her life cut short by tragedy. It was perfect. It was Oscar-worthy. And it was completely fake. I watched her eyes. That's where the engineering fails. The face can contort, the voice can crack, but the eyes always tell you where the load is really being carried. Every time a guest moved away, her sobbing would cut off instantly, like a switch had been flipped. Her eyes would dart around the room, scanning, calculating. She wasn't mourning a husband. She was assessing a crowd. I saw her check her watch, a diamond-encrusted thing Jared certainly couldn't afford, 3 times in 5 minutes. She wasn't checking the time. She was checking notifications. I saw the reflection of the screen in her dark glasses. Stock tickers, real estate listings. She was checking the market while her husband's body lay cooling in a box not 10 feet away. "Nolan," a voice murmured. I turned to see Hamilton, my lawyer and oldest friend. He looked as tired as I felt. His suit was rumpled, his tie slightly askew. He was the only person in this room, besides me, who knew the layout of the landmines we were standing on. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice low. "I'm fine," I said, my eyes never leaving Serena. "Just watching the show." Hamilton followed my gaze. Serena was now embracing an elderly aunt, her shoulders shaking. "She's good," Hamilton admitted grimly. I almost believed her for a second. "She's sloppy," I corrected. "Look at her hands." Hamilton squinted. Serena's hand was resting on the aunt's back, but her fingers were tapping a rhythmic, impatient beat against the fabric. It wasn't the erratic tremor of grief. It was the tapped cadence of someone waiting for a traffic light to change. She was bored. "She's waiting for the intermission," I said. "She wants the audience to leave so she can start the second act." A moment later, Serena looked up and locked eyes with me. For a split second, the mask slipped. There was no sadness in those dark irises. There was only cold, predatory assessment. She looked at me the way a demolition expert looks at a condemned building. She was measuring the charges. Then she blinked, and the tears returned. She excused herself from the aunt and floated toward me, a black ghost in a cloud of expensive perfume. "Dad," she whispered, her voice a fragile, cracked thing. She reached out and took my hands. Her grip was firm, cool, and dry, no clammy palms of anxiety, just the steady grip of a surgeon. "I don't know how we're going to do this. I just don't know how I can go on without him." I nodded slowly, playing the part she expected, the stoic, shell-shocked father. "We take it one day at a time, Serena." She squeezed my hands tighter, her nails digging into my skin. She leaned in close, lowering her voice so the guests nearby wouldn't hear. "And the house. Oh God, Nolan, the house. It's just so big. It's so full of him. Every corner, every room. I don't think I can bear to stay there. It's too much pain." There it was. The first charge was set. "We'll discuss it later," I said gently. "Today is for Jared." "Of course," she sniffled, pulling back and wiping a non-existent tear from her cheek. "You're right. I'm so overwhelmed." She turned and drifted back to the crowd, seamlessly transitioning back into the grieving widow role. I watched her go. She thought she was planting a seed. She thought she was preparing me for the conversation to come. She had no idea she had just confirmed every suspicion I'd harbored for the last 6 months. "She's making her move tonight," I murmured to Hamilton. "Are you sure?" he asked. "She's talking about the house being a burden," I said. "She wants me to think she's doing me a favor by taking it off my hands. She's going to try to evict me, Hamilton." Hamilton stiffened. "You know the plan. If she pushes, you fold. You do not fight her. You let her think she's won." "I know," I said, adjusting my cuffs. "I built the trap. I know how to walk into it." The silence in the house was worse than the noise of the funeral parlor. The guests had left. The casseroles had been put in the fridge. The performative sympathy had evaporated. Now it was just the three of us. Me, Serena, and the ghost of the son I had failed to protect. I sat in Audrey's old armchair in the living room. It was floral, outdated, and incredibly comfortable. It was my sanctuary. Serena was pacing the room, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floors I had installed myself 30 years ago. The transformation was instantaneous. The moment the front door clicked locked, the grieving widow vanished. Her posture straightened. The hunch of sorrow disappeared. She kicked off her heels, not with exhaustion, but with annoyance. She walked straight to the liquor cabinet, my liquor cabinet, and poured herself 3 fingers of my best scotch. She didn't ask if I wanted any. She didn't offer a glass to the empty air for Jared. She downed half of it in one swallow and turned to face me. "All right, Nolan," she said. Her voice was unrecognizable. The tremulous whisper was gone, replaced by a flat, metallic tone. "We need to talk." I looked up, keeping my expression vacant. "Talk?" "Serena, it's been a long day. Maybe we should rest." "I don't have time for rest," she snapped. She walked over to the coffee table and picked up her purse. It was a large, structured leather bag that looked like it could hold a brick. She reached inside and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy, decisive thud. Jared handled his affairs before he passed, she said, crossing her arms. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He knew how difficult this would be for me. I looked at the envelope, then at her. What is that? It's an updated will, she said, and a quitclaim deed. Jared signed the house over to me 3 months ago. He wanted me to have it. He wanted me to have security. I leaned forward, my joints popping, and reached for the papers. I put on my reading glasses, taking my time. I needed her to see an old man struggling to focus. I opened the deed. It was a sophisticated forgery. I had to give her that. The paper stock was correct. The notarization stamp looked authentic, and there, at the bottom, was my signature. Nolan Pierce. I stared at it. To the untrained eye, it was perfect. But I am not an untrained eye. I spent 40 years staring at blueprints, spotting microfractures in steel beams that were invisible to the naked eye. I knew my signature better than I knew my own face. The pressure was wrong. When I sign the N, I press hard on the downstroke. It creates a microscopic indentation in the paper. This signature was flat. It was a high-resolution print, or a very careful tracing using a gel pen that flowed too evenly. And the P in Pierce. It trailed off slightly to the right. I never trail off. I end with a sharp, deliberate stop. I don't remember signing this, I said, my voice quavering just enough. You were confused, Nolan, Serena said quickly. Her tone was condescending, like she was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. You were having one of your episodes. You told Jared you wanted him to have the house. You said it was too much work for you. You insisted. Episodes? I asked. Don't play dumb, she sneered. You've been forgetting things for months. Jared was worried about you. We both were. That's why we're doing this. To help you. She leaned over the table, invading my space. Here's the reality, Nolan. The house is mine. The law is on my side. But I'm not a monster. I know you're grieving. I know you're old. She held up 10 fingers. 10 days, she said. I'm giving you 10 days to pack your things and get out. I've already spoken to a realtor. I'm selling the place. It's too big and frankly, it's depressing. I'm going to use the money to start fresh. Somewhere warm. Somewhere without all these ghosts. 10 days, I repeated. To leave my home of 40 years. It's not your home anymore, she said coldly. It's my asset. And if you try to fight this, if you try to drag this out in probate, I will have you declared incompetent. I have the medical records, Nolan. I have the notes about your memory lapses. I will put you in a state-run facility so fast your head will spin. She stood back, triumphant. She thought she had played the ace. She thought she was looking at a broken man who would beg for mercy. I looked down at the floor. I let a silence stretch out between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I counted to 5 in my head. Then I looked up and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a small, tight lifting of the corners of my mouth. It was the smile I used to give contractors when they tried to tell me that substandard concrete would hold just fine. Okay, I said. Serena blinked. The sneer faltered. What? I said okay, I repeated, standing up. You're right. It is a big house. Maybe it is time for me to move on. She took a step back, confused. You're not going to fight me? Why fight the inevitable? I said. If Jared wanted you to have it, then you should have it. I turned and walked toward the stairs. Wait, she called out, suspicion creeping into her voice. Where are you going? To pack, I said over my shoulder. You said 10 days. I don't need 10 days. I prefer to be efficient. I left her standing in the living room, staring at my back. She looked like a hunter whose prey had just walked willingly into the oven. She didn't understand. She couldn't understand. She thought she had won the war. She didn't realize she had just armed the bomb. I walked up the stairs, my hand trailing along the banister I had sanded and stained myself. I didn't go to the master bedroom. I went to the study at the end of the hall. This was my domain. It was lined with books on structural dynamics, geology, and fluid mechanics. It smelled of old paper and pipe tobacco. I closed the door and locked it. I didn't go to the closet. I went to the corner of the room, where a heavy oak bookshelf stood. I wasn't packing clothes. I wasn't packing toiletries. I knelt down and gripped the bottom shelf. It was on a hidden track I had designed 10 years ago. With a firm tug, the entire unit slid forward 3 inches, revealing a gap in the floorboards beneath it. I pried up the loose board. Inside, nestled in the insulation, was a black waterproof duffel bag. My go bag. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I unzipped it to check the inventory. One encrypted military-grade hard drive containing a mirror of my entire financial life. One physical folder containing the original deed to the house, kept safe from Serena's prying eyes. 2 burner phones, $50,000 in non-sequential cash, and most importantly, a stack of audio cassette tapes. I ran my thumb over the plastic cases of the tapes. These were my insurance. Jared hadn't been strong, but he hadn't been silent. In his final weeks, when the pressure from Serena became too much, he used to come into this study to work. He didn't know I had installed a voice-activated analog recording system in the ventilation ducts years ago, a relic from a paranoia induced by a corporate espionage case in the 90s. I had never turned it off. I had hours of him talking to her on the phone. I had hours of her screaming at him. I had the threats. I zipped the bag. I stood up and took a look around the room. I was leaving everything else. The books, the photos, the awards. They were just things. Structural integrity isn't about the decoration. It's about the foundation. And I was taking the foundation with me. I unlocked the door and walked back downstairs. Serena was still in the living room. She was on her phone, her back to me. "Yes, I know," she was saying, her voice low and excited. "He didn't even fight. He's packing now. I think the old fool is actually relieved." "Yes, list it for 2.5. We can get a bidding war going." I walked past the doorway. She spun around, startled. "You're leaving?" she asked, eyeing the single black bag. "That's all you're taking?" "Travel light," I said. "I'll send movers for the furniture later, if I decide I want it." I walked to the front door. I paused and looked at her one last time. She was standing in the center of my home, holding a glass of my whiskey, plotting the sale of my life's work. She looked powerful. She looked victorious. "Goodbye, Serena," I said. "Good luck with the sale." "Goodbye, Nolan," she said, unable to hide the smirk. "Don't forget to leave the keys." "I left them on the kitchen counter," I lied. I still had my set in my pocket. I stepped out into the cool evening air and pulled the door shut. I heard the heavy thunk of the deadbolt. I walked down the driveway to my sedan. I tossed the bag in the passenger seat and got in. I started the engine, but I didn't put it in gear. I pulled out one of the burner phones from the bag. I dialed a number I had memorized. It rang once. "Fletcher," a sharp female voice answered. "It's Nolan," I said. "I'm out. The target is isolated inside the structure." Did she take the bait? Detective Fletcher asked. Hook, line, and sinker, I said. She served me the eviction notice. She produced the forged deed. She's in there right now calling a realtor. Perfect, Fletcher said. We have probable cause on the forgery, and the eviction attempt proves intent to defraud. We're clear to move. She's all yours, Detective, I said. Don't break down the door if you don't have to. It's mahogany. No promises, Nolan, she replied. See you at the station. I hung up and put the car in drive. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw the silhouette of Serena in the window, watching me leave. She thought she was watching a defeat. She didn't know she was watching the fuse burn down to the powder keg. I checked into a motel 3 miles away. It was a nondescript place, the kind where people go to disappear. I didn't unpack. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the television without turning it on. I didn't need to see the news. I could see the scene in my head. I could visualize it with the clarity of a CAD rendering. It was 7 p.m. Serena would be celebrating. She would have opened a bottle of champagne by now. She would be sitting on the white sofa, her feet up, scrolling through Zillow, picking out her new villa in Tuscany or her condo in Miami. She would be feeling the unparalleled high of getting away with it. Then, the knock. Not a polite tap. The heavy, authoritative pound of a police battering ram testing the frame. I imagined her freezing, the glass halfway to her lips. The confusion. Who could that be? She would assume it was a neighbor, or maybe me coming back to beg for more time. She would open the door, annoyance written all over her face, and she would find Detective Fletcher standing there. Fletcher wasn't a large woman, but she projected the density of a neutron star. Behind her would be 4 uniformed officers. Serena Pierce? Fletcher would say, flashing her badge. Yes? Serena would stammer. What is this? What's going on? I have a warrant for your arrest, Fletcher would say, stepping into the foyer without asking. Charges include bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and forgery. I could see the color draining from Serena's face. Fraud? That's ridiculous. My husband handled the finances. He just died. This is harassment. We know about the Cayman accounts, Serena, Fletcher would say calmly. We know about the $200,000 transfer from Nolan's equity line to the shell company in Georgetown, the one listed under your maiden name. That would be the hammer blow. The victim card relied on ignorance. It relied on her being the clueless wife. But specific offshore accounts in her name? That required intent. That required signatures. She would try to backpedal. I didn't know. Jared made me sign things. He was in trouble. He had gambling debts. He forced me. Save it for the interview room, Fletcher would say. Cuff her. I imagined the cold steel of the handcuffs clicking around her wrists. The wrists that had poured my whiskey an hour ago. The shock, the indignity. She would be marched out past the neighbors, past Mrs. Higgins, who was undoubtedly watching from her porch with glee, and shoved into the back of a cruiser. I looked at the clock. 7:45 p.m., it was done. The house was secure. The predator was caged. My phone rang. It was Fletcher. We have her, Fletcher said. Her voice was tight. But we have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? We secured the laptop, Fletcher said. The one she kept in the safe. The one you said had the digital trail of the blackmail. And? It's bricked, Nolan, Fletcher said. Fried. As soon as we logged it into evidence, it initiated a remote wipe. A dead man's switch. Someone on the outside triggered it. I drove to the precinct in a daze. The plan had been perfect. The laptop was the smoking gun. It contained the emails where Serena threatened to expose Jared's gambling debts to the IRS if he didn't help her steal the house. Without that laptop, it was just her word against a dead man's. I met Fletcher in the observation room, looking into interrogation B. Serena was sitting at the metal table. She didn't look scared anymore. She looked smug. Sitting next to her was a man in a suit that cost more than my car. Jennings. I knew Jennings by reputation. He was a fixer, a high-priced legal shark who specialized in getting white-collar criminals out of impossible corners. He was the one who had triggered the wipe. She called him the second we let her make a call, Fletcher said, pacing the small room. By the time we got the laptop to cybercrimes, the drive was being rewritten with garbage data. It's gone, Nolan. The emails, the texts, the financial logs, all of it. I looked through the one-way glass. Jennings was whispering something to Serena. She smiled, a cold, reptilian smile. "What's their angle?" I asked. "They're pivoting," Fletcher said. "Jennings just told the DA that Serena is the victim of a coercive, abusive husband. He claims Jared set up the offshore accounts to frame her. He claims Jared forged the deed and forced her to go along with it. With the digital evidence gone, we can't prove she was the mastermind." "You have the forged deed," I said. "Jennings claims she didn't know it was forged," Fletcher said. "He says she thought it was legitimate. Being the beneficiary of a fraud isn't the same as committing it, not without proof of intent. If they sell this story, she walks on the fraud charges. She might even keep the house." I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. "She's lying." "We know she's lying," Fletcher said, "but knowing isn't proving. We need something concrete, something Jennings can't remote wipe." I stared at Serena. She looked so comfortable. She thought she had outsmarted the system. She thought technology was the only way to catch her. "She thinks in binary," I muttered. "She thinks in zeros and ones. Digital, cloud, remote." "What are you talking about?" Fletcher asked. "I'm an engineer, detective," I said, turning away from the glass. "I don't trust the cloud. Clouds dissipate. I trust concrete. I trust steel." "Nolan, where are you going with this?" "The laptop wasn't the only record," I said. "Jared was terrified of her. He knew she was monitoring his phone and his email, so he went analog. He recorded their conversations on tape." "Tape?" Fletcher blinked. "Like cassettes?" "Yes," I said. "But we have a problem." "What?" "I thought they were in my go bag," I said. "But when I checked in the car, the case was empty. I must have left the tapes in the cache." "The cache?" "I built a safe into the house," I said. "Not a wall safe behind a painting. A structural safe. It's cast directly into the load-bearing column in the basement foundation. You can't open it with a code. You can't wipe it remotely." "How do we get it?" "We don't open it," I said grimly. "We have to drill it out. We need a demolition team." Returning to the house felt like entering a crime scene, which, legally, it was. Yellow tape was draped across the front door. A patrol car sat in the driveway. I led Fletcher and a team from the city's public works department down to the basement. It was a finished basement, carpeted and painted, but I walked straight to the central support pillar. It looked like a standard drywall column. "Here," I said, tapping the wall. "Behind this drywall is a reinforced concrete piling, 3 feet thick. It supports the main crossbeam of the entire house." "And the tapes are inside?" Fletcher asked, looking skeptical. "When I poured the foundation for the renovation in '98, I explained, I embedded a lead-lined steel box into the wet concrete. I left a PVC feed tube to drop things in, but no way to take them out. It's a time capsule, or a black box. You built a black box for your house? One of the workers asked. I built a black box for my life, I corrected. Get the hammer drill. The worker fired up a heavy-duty Hilti drill with a diamond-tipped bit. The sound was deafening. Dust filled the air, coating our clothes in fine gray powder. It took 20 minutes just to breach the outer layer of concrete. I watched the drill bit grinding inch by inch. This was the difference between Serena and me. She built webs of lies that could be swept away with a keystroke. I built truths into the bedrock. "Break through!" the worker shouted. The drill lurched forward into a void. He pulled the drill back and used a sledgehammer to widen the hole. He reached a gloved hand inside the dark cavity. "Got something," he grunted. He pulled out a dusty plastic bundle. It was wrapped in heavy-duty construction plastic. He handed it to me. I cut the plastic open with my pocket knife. Inside were 3 audio cassettes. "Analog," I said, holding them up to Fletcher. "Unhackable." Fletcher grabbed an evidence bag. "Get these to the lab. I want them digitized and transcribed immediately." "Wait," I said. "There's something else." I reached into the hole again. My fingers brushed against something cold and metallic. I pulled it out. It wasn't a tape. It was a small, crushed velvet bag. I opened it. Inside was a heavy gold ring with a large ruby. "What is that?" Fletcher asked. "It's my class ring," I said, confused. "I lost this 2 years ago. I thought I dropped it in the yard." Then it hit me. Jared. "Jared put this here," I whispered. "He must have known about the feed tube. I showed him when he was a kid." I turned the ring over. Wrapped tightly around the band was a small scrap of paper. I unfolded it. It was a receipt, a pawnshop receipt. He stole it, I realized. He stole it to gamble, but he couldn't go through with selling it. So he hid it here. He hid his shame in the foundation. I looked at the date on the receipt. It was from 3 years ago, the start of the spiral. "This proves nothing about Serena," Fletcher said gently. "It just proves Jared had a problem." "No," I said, my mind racing. "It proves he had access, and if he put this here, maybe he put something else here." I shone a flashlight into the hole. Deep in the back, lodged against the rebar, was a small, crumpled prescription bag. I fished it out. The label was faded but legible. Walgreens. Patient. Nolan Pierce. Medication. Oxycodone. Cootie 30. "My pain meds," I said, my blood running cold. "From my back surgery last year. I thought I misplaced them. I accused the cleaning lady." "Why would Jared hide your pain meds in the wall?" Fletcher asked. "He didn't," I said. "Jared was addicted to gambling, not pills. He was terrified of drugs. He wouldn't touch them." I looked at the bag again. There was something written on the back in frantic, scrawled Sharpie. "S. found them. She says she's keeping them for insurance. If I don't sign the deed, she says she'll use them on me. God help me." The silence in the basement was absolute. The drill, the dust, the police. It all faded. "She didn't just threaten to expose him," I said, my voice shaking. "She threatened to kill him. And then, she did." We had the note. We had the tapes. But Jennings was a monster in the courtroom. He would argue the note was forged by Jared to frame Serena. He would argue the tapes were out of context. We needed a link, a physical link between Serena and the act of murder. We were standing on the front lawn, the police lights flashing, when a voice called out from the hedge. Is she gone? Is the witch finally gone? I turned to see Mrs. Higgins. She was 80 years old, wore a floral muumuu, and spent most of her day spying on the neighborhood through her blinds. Serena had despised her. Serena had called her the neighborhood gargoyle, and had once threatened to poison her cats if they came into our yard. "She's in custody, Mrs. Higgins," I said. "Good riddance," Mrs. Higgins spat. She hobbled over, leaning on her cane. She looked at Detective Fletcher. "Are you the police?" "I am," Fletcher said. "You need to see my movies," Mrs. Higgins said. "Your movies?" "My security cameras," Mrs. Higgins said proudly. "I installed them last month. High definition, night vision, to catch the kids who knock over my gnomes." "Mrs. Higgins," I said, "what did you see?" "I saw her," she said, pointing a gnarly finger at my front door. "3 nights ago, the night poor Jared died." Fletcher stepped forward. "What time?" 3 a.m., Mrs. Higgins said. "I was up making tea. My sciatica was acting up. I got an alert on my iPad." She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. It was attached to a keychain shaped like a cat. "She came out the side door," Mrs. Higgins recounted. "She was wearing gloves, rubber cleaning gloves. She walked to your garbage cans, opened them, then shook her head. Then she walked to the neighbors' cans, the Millers, across the street. She put a small bag in there." "Disposing of evidence," Fletcher muttered. "That's not all," Mrs. Higgins said. "Then she went to the garden hose. She washed her hands. But she scrubbed them, Detective, like she was trying to get paint off. Or chemicals." "Fentanyl," I whispered. "If she used patches, the residue is sticky. It's hard to get off." "I have it all in 4K, Mrs. Higgins said, pressing the USB drive into Fletcher's hand. "I saved it because she looked so guilty, and because I hoped she was breaking a law so I could report her." Fletcher gripped the drive like it was a gold bar. "Mrs. Higgins, you just became my favorite person in this city." "Just make sure she doesn't come back," Mrs. Higgins huffed, "and tell her the gargoyle sends her regards." While Fletcher rushed the new evidence to the lab, I went to see Hamilton. Jennings was on the warpath. He had filed an emergency motion to unfreeze the assets. He argued that without a murder charge, which hadn't been filed yet, there was no legal standing to deny Serena her inheritance. He was trying to loot the estate before the ship sank. We sat in Hamilton's office, staring at the speakerphone. Jennings was on the line, sounding smug. "My client is suffering," Jennings drawled. "She is a grieving widow being persecuted by the state. The trust fund is rightfully hers. We demand immediate disbursement of the $1.5 million to cover her legal defense." Hamilton looked at me and winked. He leaned into the microphone. "We understand your position, Mr. Jennings," Hamilton said smoothly. "And we are prepared to execute the trust's provisions. However, have you reviewed the amendment to the charter? The one dated 6 months ago?" "I've reviewed the beneficiary clause," Jennings snapped. "It lists Serena Pierce as the sole secondary beneficiary." "Keep reading," Hamilton said. "Article 9, Section 4, subsection C." There was a silence on the line. I could hear papers shuffling. Then a sharp intake of breath. "What is this?" Jennings asked, his voice losing its oily smoothness. "It's a clean hands provision," I said, speaking for the first time. "I engineered it myself." "The clause states," Hamilton read, "that in the event of the primary beneficiary's death, the secondary beneficiary may only access funds after a complete independent forensic audit, clears them of any direct or indirect involvement in financial or physical harm against the grantor or the primary beneficiary. This is absurd, Jennings sputtered. You can't enforce this. It gets better, I continued. The clause also states that by formally requesting the funds, the beneficiary automatically consents to a full discovery of all personal financial records to prove their innocence. A waive of privacy clause. You trapped her, Jennings whispered. He realized what he had done. By filing the motion to get the money, he had legally opened the door for us to audit Serena's entire life. He had handed us the keys to the Cayman accounts that the remote wipe was supposed to hide. You triggered the trap, Jennings, I said. You got greedy. Now, not only is the money frozen until the murder investigation is resolved, but you just gave the DA permission to subpoena every bank account she has. I'm withdrawing the motion, Jennings shouted. Too late, Hamilton said, hitting the disconnect button. It's already filed. Hamilton sat back and laughed. It was a dry, dusty laugh. Nolan, you son of a gun. You really did think of everything. I didn't want to, I said softly. I really didn't want to be right. 2 hours later, we were in the DA's office. The atmosphere was electric. The pieces were coming together. The toxicology report is back, the assistant district attorney said, throwing a file on the table. It confirms it. Jared didn't die from street drugs. He died from a massive overdose of prescription oxycodone and fentanyl. Matches the stash found in the wall, Fletcher said. And the bag Mrs. Higgins saw her toss? We recovered it from the landfill. It's a long shot, but the lab found traces of the adhesive backing from fentanyl patches inside the plastic bag. And a partial fingerprint on the adhesive side. Whose fingerprint? I asked. Serena's, Fletcher said. She wore gloves to throw it away, but she must have taken one glove off to peel the backing off the patch. It's tricky to do with rubber gloves. She peeled the patch, I said, visualizing the scene. She put it on him. The tapes confirm the motive, Fletcher added. We have her on audio telling him, if you don't fix this, I will fix you. We have her admitting to the forgery. We have the financial motive. And now we have the murder weapon, the DA said. This isn't fraud anymore. This is capital murder. The deposition room was cold and sterile. Serena was there, looking haggard. The orange jumpsuit washed out her complexion. Jennings sat beside her, but he looked defeated. The poison pill had destroyed his defense strategy, and the fingerprint had destroyed his leverage. Fletcher placed a small cassette player on the table. We recovered this from the foundation of the house, Fletcher said. Jared recorded everything, Serena. She stared at the player, her eyes wide. Fletcher pressed play. The sound was grainy, but the voices were clear. Jared's voice, sobbing, Serena, please, I can't do it. I can't steal his house. He's my dad. Serena's voice, cold and hard. You are weak, Jared. You are a pathetic, weak little man. If you don't sign those papers, I'm sending the photos of you at the casino to him. I'm sending them to your boss. You'll be ruined. Jared. I'll tell him. I'll tell him everything. Serena. You won't say a word, because if you do, I have insurance. Remember the pills, Jared? The ones I found? One of those on your skin while you sleep, and you just don't wake up. It would look like such a tragic accident. The tape clicked off. Serena was trembling. She wasn't crying fake tears anymore. She was shaking with genuine terror. That's manipulated, Jennings tried to say, but his heart wasn't in it. It's analog, I said from the corner of the room. No deep fakes, no edits, just the truth. The DA leaned forward. Here is the deal, Serena. We have the fingerprint on the patch backing. We have the video of you dumping the evidence. We have the motive. We go to trial. We go for the death penalty. Serena flinched. Or, the DA continued, you plead guilty to everything. The fraud, the forgery, and manslaughter. You give us a full allocation. You tell us exactly how you did it. And you take 15 years. Serena looked at Jennings. He didn't look back. He was busy packing his briefcase. He knew when a building was coming down. Serena's voice was a whisper. I just wanted the money. He was going to give it away. He was going to waste it. You killed him for a house, I said. She looked at me, her eyes filled with hate. He was weak, Nolan, just like you made him. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. He was weak, I agreed. But I'm not. Take the deal, Serena. She slumped in her chair. I'll take it. The house was quiet. The yellow tape was gone. The police were gone. The smell of lilies had finally faded, replaced by the scent of dust and old wood. I walked through the rooms. I touched the walls. They were solid. The foundation was secure. The legal title was back in my name. The bank accounts were restored. The trust fund was locked down, waiting for a beneficiary that would never come. I sat in Audrey's chair. It felt different now. It felt bigger. Or maybe I had just become smaller. I looked at the photo of Jared on the mantel. He was smiling, that goofy, lopsided smile he had inherited from his mother. Serena was right. He had been weak, and that was my fault. I had engineered his life to be frictionless. I had smoothed out every bump, absorbed every shock. I had built him a life with no stress points, so when the first real pressure was applied, he didn't bend, he shattered. I had protected him from the world, but I hadn't protected him from himself, and I hadn't protected him from the one thing I couldn't engineer away: human greed. I had won. The predator was in a cage. The assets were safe. The system had worked perfectly. But as I sat there in the silence, listening to the settling groans of the house I had built with my own hands, I realized the terrible truth of my victory. I was the king of an empty castle. I was the architect of a fortress with no one inside to protect. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Mrs. Higgins was watering her garden, her security camera blinking red in the twilight. Life went on. I would go on too. I was an engineer. We don't stop when the structure fails. We analyze the data, we clear the debris, and we build again. But tonight, I would just sit in the dark and mourn the boy who wasn't strong enough to survive the design. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.